everybody. Today I'm going to work on assembling the front end, and I'll show you there's to get these radius rods into the front axle and get them screwed into the back bolster is a little tricky, so I'll walk you through that and show you how I am doing it, and hopefully that'll help you on your project. But first of all, got the front bolster that goes up underneath the block. I took the wheels off, or I took the cart out from underneath it and put the rear wheels on, because I needed more room to get this bolster on. I wanted to put the front axle underneath it so it'd be more stable on the floor than on that cart, to tighten up the head bolts and to torque those down. I didn't want to knock it off and roll it over, so I decided to start putting the wheels on it. But here's the front axle. The center hole, I don't know if you could find a better one, but it's so good that I didn't think it was worth machining. It's a pretty good front axle. The only problem over here was that they let the steering worm wear into the axle a little bit, but I inserted a new bushing in there, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. So I'm going to stick these in here, and then I'm going to put a nut on here, a double nut, and lock them together so that I can put a wrench on there and screw that together. This is a new old stock rear bolster. I'm not sure exactly how that goes, which way, but I think I'm going to put the part number up. Already forgot the lock washer. Screw that mostly in, and then if you spread those apart, I've got about an inch out of the hole right here, and this one's clear in here, back here. And now I will lock these nuts on here. And then I'll screw it into the back bolster. They give you enough play in these front axle holes so you can gain enough spread on the back to get those screwed in there. And then once you got screwed in there, you can take your double nut back off. And then you want to measure the distance you got from the back of your case up to the front. I got about 22 inches. It's got to be from there to here. So right now I'm at 23. So I need to probably screw them in some more. And maybe I should have left the lock nuts on there. This one here needs to be turned in more. But if you're not concerned about scratching up your paint, that's not all that one's going to go. To the very front, I need 26 inches. So That doesn't want to go in there very good. There it's going. I think I'll leave it somewhere in there. Try the other side. Probably take this one up another 1/2 inch. Yeah, I was lucky to find this axle. It's the spindle holes over on the end are really nice also. I actually bought a 27D that had this axle under it. So that was a lucky find. So when you're out there looking for parts for your particular tractor, you got to know what you're looking for on almost every part. Otherwise, you'll overlook something. Because back in the day, they swapped parts back and forth pretty readily. And a lot of times, the earlier tractors were thought of less value because they were older, and so they robbed the pieces off of them to keep their newer models going. Okay, we'll see where we're at now. Yeah, we're almost right in the middle of the front bolster when this is up against the washer on the back, so I think that's going to be perfect. Okay, got those tight. We'll fix the spindle in. And once again, you want the part number up with the grease zerk to the back. And this one will be the same way. Part number up with the grease zerk to the back. And then I've got new spindle bolts. And everything fits pretty nice and snug. I've got some spacer washers. You want to put some washers at least on top. Put a couple washers on top. Looks like I'll have plenty of room to put a couple on the bottom too. Though the axle really doesn't look that worn in there. And then I got a couple on each side. Really, the ones on the top are the only ones that are going to do anything. You got to have some thrust washers in there. Otherwise, it'll grind into the axle, the top of the spindle will. And in the book, it calls for, it runs in my mind, those are like 1D147R washers. And then the steering sector. And those were originally riveted on there. So I got some rivets. And I will attempt to rivet those together. You can't rivet that on until it's in the axle because it goes around the center gusset here. So you have to rivet them in place. So I'll have to set up and do that. When I get it all assembled, I'll put a grease zerk in there and grease it. And then I'll probably come back and put the grease cups in that were particular to the 25. For now, I'm gonna stop the tape and I'll get ready to rivet those rivets. Okay, I'm set up here to put the rivets in. I'll talk about my tool a little bit. This is actually a shaft out of the Packer wheels on a Maximerge planter that holds the gauge wheels, drives through the frame, and then each gauge wheel pivots on here, and I use that so you can still see I have a screw in there for where the cap screw goes on. And then on this end, I took a cup out of a Model A Ford shock absorber arm and welded that on there. And so that's my riveting tool. The bottom part is a machined piece that was turned on a lathe with a divot in it that fits the head of the rivet. And so I set that on there. I get the rivet hot, and then I rivet it down. You got to move pretty quick because with the cold iron all the way around it, it cools off the rivet pretty fast. So we'll heat up this rivet and stick it in there and see if we can rivet it down. Get it just as hot before it starts to melt the iron as you can. And there it is. Now we'll do the front one. That's hot. I put a couple bolts in that to hold it so I got the first two rivets in. And you want to heat it up just as much as you can before it starts to melt. Okay. I did have a rivet gun. I'll come over and show you the rivet gun. I had this rivet gun that's a smaller version of the other one. It takes about a 0.4 shanked set in it, and I ordered one, but I don't have it yet. But that'll probably work quite a bit better. But I wanted to show you, I'm going to use this when I put the steering shafts together with the U-joints. But I wanted to show you how you could do it without a rivet gun too. Make your own sets and set it up and heat up the rivet and rivet them down the old-fashioned way. So just wanted to show you that. Now my next mode of action is to get it up underneath the tractor. I'll reset the cameras. So now I'm down underneath the tractor here. As you see, my rear pivot bolt in the case has got a washer on it in front of it. And then I'm going to put a spacer and another washer over the pivot bracket when I get that all together. So, and in the front, I've got a new pin. Seems like that was a 191R or something like that. But anyway, that goes in there with the big old cotter key. See there? So we'll lift that up in there. I'd leave the bushing off so it gives me a little bit more leeway. Quite let me get it up there. We'll put the bushing in. Let's see, I don't think I want a washer on that. It's supposed to have a cotter key through there. Okay. Okay, now that I got the nut on, you put a key or a cotter pin in here. The nut goes underneath there. Keyway in here for the tie rod. I've already got the key. Cotter pin in there. Just a little bit more. My worm gear installed, and I'm just mocking it up to see what all I need to do to adjust it, and I think I've got it all adjusted pretty well. I might have to put in another washer in here, but I can't install it because I got to rivet all the steering shafts and U-joints all together and then put the shaft back in the axle. I think everything's going to fit and look really nice. And you see I got the axle mostly in the center of the bolster, and got the rear piece mounted in there. The reason the rear piece isn't painted is because it's new old stock and I just left it the way it was. So that's it for the front end. That'll be the conclusion of this episode. Next episode will be working on the head and installing it and the rocker arms and the push rods and all that. So stay tuned in, and if you missed any of the previous episodes, well, you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe and catch all the back episodes. But keep on watching and we'll finally get it accomplished. We'll see you down the road.